McNair gives it to George, running right up the middle. Touchdown! Titans! There are no flags on the field! It's a miracle!
Safety, now you're one-on-one with it.
Shows why he's the man! In trouble. Sack!
And gentlemen, Titan Nation, welcome back. It's getting crazy. Titans Twitter is going all over the place. People are assuming, people think they're GMs. I mean, it's getting ugly out there. People are freaking out about the Tennessee Titans. Why did they cut Julio Jones? Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's free agency. It's about to get nuts. Joining me today is Kayla Anderson. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. Obviously, the news today came down about Julio Jones and the Titans planning on releasing him, obviously, after that June 1st date, making it a designated official spot. But at the same time, I think more Titans fans were really expecting maybe for the Titans to sign some guys today on the first official day of free agency. It just looks like right now they're subtracting, and from what I am understanding, it looks like they're kind of just doing what they're doing and not making any massive moves right now. So you're wondering, is it all going to be left up to what they're doing in the draft and maybe making some small moves here and there?
Exactly. And again, J-Rob likes to play it very close to the chest. I said it several times before. I go, hey guys, don't go crazy just yet. Just because we haven't made splashes doesn't mean I mean, people are already saying the season's a bust. The season hasn't even started, and people are just going nuts. I mean, it happens, especially with the salary cap and all this stuff. I mean, there are some surprises, and we'll get to that. And there's some, obviously there have been roster moves that you kind of saw that coming and stuff like that. What were kind of one of your surprises in one of the roster cuts maybe that you didn't see coming?
Honestly, I really didn't go just right away to the Julio Jones being cut. And I thought, if anything, they wouldn't announce it right now just because, it can't officially come off the books until after June 1st in terms of saving that $9-point-something million, freeing up that cap space. So I was really shocked to see that come down today. But other than that, to tell you the truth, I pretty much predicted that the guys that they pretty much parted ways with, which includes Roger Saffold on the offensive line. Look, I think they loved Big Raj, and I think Titans fans really appreciated what he's done here in Tennessee. He's the ultimate pro. He, for the most part, even though he dealt with injuries, was always out there. Might have taken a break during a game here or there, but he was always starting games. And I just think that just came down to the money side of things. On the other hand, you see a guy like Darrington Evans, who they drafted not long ago in what is turning out to be an awful draft class. And I think that just potentially came down to him not being able to stay healthy, and they just eventually had to move on from him. Let's see, what were some of the other ones that you saw Jackrabbit Jenkins. I think that was my first cut that I thought was going to happen, because you knew Jackrabbit was going to free up about $7 million in cap space. And the thing with him is he was okay last year, but I think their sights are set on Caleb Farley, their draft pick last year in the first round, being healthy this year and being a starter at that cornerback position opposite of Christian Fulton. So I think that's what they're resting their laurels on right now, is hoping that he's going to be healthy. Now, they might bring in somebody else later on to kind of be a depth guy, but I think that's where their mind is at. And I think that's why it made it so easy to part ways with Jackrabbit Jenkins. other than that, I think the biggest surprise that I had, and I think that just comes down to money as well, is I think it's more of a disappointment is not being able to sign Deontay Foreman
Yep.
again. But then again, he proved his worth for the most part when he had to back up Derrick Henry this past season. And so teams were obviously willing to pay him a little bit more. And I just don't think the Titans could afford that. But now, you got to think about that situation too. With Derrick Henry needing some sort of a backup. Obviously, Kari Blasingame is parted ways. He put his farewell to Nashville out on Twitter today. So there's a lot of needs in several different departments now, and you just have to wonder what is the Titans' plans.
Yeah, and that's another thing. There's a lot of glaring holes, right? I mean, there's tight end. That's still we don't have a number one tight end. We still don't.
Yeah.
I know they just signed. Oh my God, what's his name for
Jeff
a 1 year deal? Yeah, Swang for a 1 year deal. Again, he didn't. To me, he didn't. I mean, he's not that big. I mean, it's just not that type of product that you're gonna have. He might be a good, T3. He might be a good tight end number 3. But other than that, they need to make a splash for tight end. And is it something that they're looking for maybe in the draft that they can depend on? Maybe a rookie? I don't know. I'd say.
Well, I hope they have something up their sleeve because I addressed this as a need last year before the start of the season, the need that was never addressed by the Titans. And look, they made their way through the season having Jeff Swaim and Anthony Firkser and Michael Pruitt, who came in late and did a sufficient job. But again, none of those are tight end ones. Like, this is the thing that's so hard for Titans fans to accept when you had a guy like Jonnu Smith who really showed up before he parted ways with Tennessee and was a big productive tight end for the Titans, especially in the red zone. And yeah, his numbers went down a bit when Taylor Lewan got hurt because then he was doing more blocking duties. But for the most part, he was really a successful tight end for the Titans when Arthur Smith was here and got the most out of the tight ends, it seemed like. Because then you had Anthony Firkser, who was not having everything thrown on his shoulders and kind of was able to be that third down guy as well. So I just think everything has kind of been pushed back because you just kind of made do with what you had in the tight ends position last year. Well, those guys are gone, and Firkser and Michael Pruitt. So now all you do is sign Jeff Swaim to a 1-year contract. And look, I have nothing against Jeff Swaim. I think that he is definitely a guy you should have on your depth chart as a tight end, and you could use him as a blocker because that's definitely something the Titans always look for. Even if they're going to sign a tight end or if they're going to draft a tight end, they want a tight end that's not afraid to take on the blocking duties. That's just a part of how their offense is and what they expect out of their tight ends. But I'm just getting a little concerned because all the tight ends that were out there on the free agent market are pretty much gone. There's not much to choose from on the free agency market. And so now you have to wonder, do they really, really just like someone in the draft right now? And that's what their plan is to try to get that guy. I just can't see them drafting a tight end in the first round. I don't really think that that's the way to go.
Definitely, I agree with that. And then going from tight end, we go to wide receiver. Now you let Julio Jones go, and he could have been easily number 2. You have A.J. Brown. Who's going to complement A.J. Brown? There's a couple wide receivers that are out there in the free agency and stuff like that. There's been talk, about Landry. People wanted Landry. I think like every single free agent wide receiver been talked about. Everyone's like kind of linked the Titans to, like, Juju Smith-Schuster. I mean, there's a bunch of them. Who do you see the Titans trying to go for a number 2 wide receiver before the draft and then picking up a couple more? Or do you stick with what you have and look what happened last year where you had, Westbrook-Akina? I mean, do you depend all your whole future on rookie wide receivers?
I don't think you can. I think you have to have some sort of another veteran presence, unless you just are rolling the dice and get to choose, you know, two wide receivers in the draft. There's other needs though that you need in the draft. You can't be just putting all your marbles into one position. Like, I feel like you've got to have some sort of guy that you get in free agency, and then you draw or you draft a wide receiver early on, and you get the right pick. You make sure that it's the right guy that's going to fit in your system, that's going to complement maybe AJ Brown, and then you've got this other guy that can come in, maybe be that number 3 or be the number 2 until your draft guy, you know, gets up to speed with everything. Make it a competition. But here's the thing. You talked about Jarvis Landry. Supposedly he's meeting with the Atlanta Falcons. I've also heard that he did not have the greatest relationship with Ryan Tannehill in Miami. So I don't think that is going to happen. The only other guy that I've heard anything in terms of some sort of a connective, you know, tied to Tennessee is Juju Smith-Schuster. So that possibly could be something that does happen. I think you're exactly right on how you said John Robinson, he doesn't let much out, right? Like the Titans don't let much get out in terms of the moves that they're going to make. So this could really just be something that hits us in the next couple of days if they decide to sign a wide receiver in free agency. So that could still be coming. I just feel like it's a bit of a mess right now, and I'm not a GM, so I'm not going to act like I know how this whole business goes. But from the outside and hearing from fans, like there's definitely some nerves here on what the Titans plan to do, because there's a lot of empty spots right now. But I think the most important positions on offense are tight end, but especially that wide receiver group, because you have to get somebody in there to help AJ Brown. He cannot take the entire load. He cannot take, I mean, that guy's been injured too. I love AJ Brown, but he has had some injuries. Who's going to say that he's going to be healthy for every single game? And then you also have to go back to Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill needs some sort of consistency around him this year. If he's going to get better, I'm sure that's going to have to be a part of it. That's what Mike Vrabel said up at the combine. Like, everybody around him's got to be better. So how are you planning on doing that? You got to bring in the right guys. You got to build that trust early. So you, in my opinion, get your offense situated as early as you can, or else we might be in the same predicament as we were last year.
So, I mean, we'll see what happens in free agency. We'll see down the line. Like I said, you know, I'm not a GM. You're not a GM. We can hope, right? We can only pray that John Robinson, which I do. I trust John Robinson. That's kind of what I tweeted out today, was like, kind of let's pump the brakes. Let's relax. Everyone's freaking out because all these, you know, tight ends are going left and right. I think Austin Cooper now.
He is.
I mean, so everyone's like freaking out, which I understand. There's time to panic, but at the same time, give it a second. Let's see what J-Rob. Maybe J-Rob, like I said, does stuff that's under the table. A lot of people don't know, and then boom, look what happened.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it happened with Julio Jones. It happened with Clowney. Yeah, they didn't work out, but at least he knows he swings and he misses, right? And he knows
Right.
when to be like, okay, this doesn't work. Let's pull the plug. And so I kind of give him credit for that. Just saying, hey, Julio Jones, it just didn't work. Maybe he's, you know, injury, he just couldn't stay on the field. I understand. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens, and we'll go from there. But like I said, thank you so much for coming on. I know you have to go and stuff, but I wanted to get your take on free agency and what's the, just real quick, what do you think is going to happen within the next days? What are your predictions? Do you see any other movements? Do you hope any movements? What's going on?
If you look at the Titans past and what John Robinson does usually in free agency, there's never really many splash moves that he makes. That's not, I don't think that's necessarily the way that he does business. It's, you know, these moves might start to trickle down as the months go on. I just don't think he's a guy for making major splash moves in free agency. It's just not what he does as a businessman, it seems like. And so, I mean, honestly, I don't see any like huge moves coming. If anything, maybe they add one of these wide receivers who are out there if they can get that guy at the right price, because that's what also plays into this all, is they are dealing with the cap issue, right? And so they're not one of these teams that has all this money to spend. So you also have to add that into the equation. It's not always easy when you're really strapped for money. And so you're going to see more subtractions at this time than additions. And again, the Julio Jones deal, in terms of saving that $9 million around there, that's going to kick in after June 1st. So there's the one word I guess I can use to tell Titans fans out there is just to be patient. And I know it's hard to see when you're looking at other teams making moves around, especially the AFC. But I think, like you said, John Robinson has a plan. And I think it might not be perfect. It might not be exactly what Titans fans want, but you got to let it play out a little. And I think the biggest thing for the Titans that has to go their way, absolutely has to go their way this year, is this draft. They have got to hit on this draft. John Robinson has to get it right, because I really think that could affect the future when it comes to just the moves that they make and the guys that they take. Because if they can't hit on this draft, they could be in some trouble.
Definitely. Again, there you have it. You have a sports analyst. She knows better than me. That's why I brought her on. Again, thank you, Kayla, so much for coming on. I appreciate it. And we'll definitely have you on, and we'll continue talking, and hopefully the Titans do something right. So
yeah, you know what? You got to have faith, right? You got to have faith. You just do. In this world that we live in, just have a little faith in your team and hopefully they can figure it out. But hey, I just say get excited about the draft, if anything. That's always a great time of the year. There's a lot of talent out there. Clearly the Titans do have some needs that they need to fill. I'm just excited to see how they go about doing it. Do they trade down and get still what should be a lot of talent at that wide receiver position in the second round? Do they stay? Do they trade up? You just never know what's up John Robinson's sleeve, but it should be fun. And of course, it's in Vegas, so it'll make it even more appealing.
well, thank you so much. Have a good one. And
You
tighten
too.
up.